Hello everyone, welcome to Discover This. I'm Tom Walker. Today we're going to spend some time at the Quinta Resort in La Quinta, California, and we're going to walk around and take a look at some of the old Hollywood history, some of the new Hollywoodish history, and just some of the other things that about this place and why you should maybe stop by and check it out sometime. So let's go see. So Walter H. Morgan of the Morgan Oyster Company family out of San Francisco opened the La Quinta Hotel on December 29th, 1926. Initially it was just the main building, which is the one down there by those palm trees straight ahead, and then 6 casitas covering over about 40 acres. And in 1929, 3 new bungalows were built, and then the property just continued to grow. Some of the original casitas are still here on the property, and we'll go take a look at some of those. So these are some of the original buildings still. The main building here, where these palm trees are on the left behind the golf carts. So these are some of the original casita buildings that are still on the property. So word started getting around Hollywood about this place, and stars such as Clark Gable, Greta Garbo, Betty Davis, Errol Flynn, Joan Crawford, Charlie Chaplin, Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, Shirley Temple all started coming out here and spending time. So in 1934, Frank Capra came to the La Quinta Hotel and wrote the script for the movie It Happened One Night, which ended up winning 5 Academy Awards that year. In 1937, he came to the hotel and wrote Lost Horizon. He also came back and wrote Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, You Can't Take It With You, and Meet John Doe. This ended up being, he called it his lucky place, his favorite place to come, and this is the cottage that Frank Capra would stay in every time. You can still rent this out. Really the only thing inside that significance of him is the typewriter he used and the desk he would sit at. But there is an acknowledgement here, a plaque. Talking about his time here at La Quinta. But he loved being out here. So again, this is the, they call it the Capra Suite, but if you ever want to rent it, he would sit out here in the yard and write, or sometimes in the room and write. There's also a bench dedicated to Frank and Lucille Capra. So probably roughly in the area where he would sit and write his scripts. So Greta Garbo was one of the Hollywood stars who was a frequent visitor to the desert out here in La Quinta. So much so that she ended up renting this cottage here, La Casa, as basically her home away from home. And her significant other, John Gilbert, spent a lot of time here up until the point when John Gilbert died. And then Greta Garbo stopped basically coming out to the desert and became even more of a recluse than she already was. Now, when she stopped coming out here, all her belongings are still in the cottage here. Her bed, all her kitchen stuff, pictures, things like that. And this cottage is open from time to time, and you can go in and see all her things. They don't rent this cottage out for people overnight anymore. They use this property and this courtyard here that Greta Garbo would hang out in for private events and things of that nature. But the room itself is no longer rented for overnight stays. So you can see a little bit through the window, not a whole lot, but this was the setup in there, at least the living room area. Can't really see in the back to where the kitchen facilities are and things like that, but it is open from time to time, so maybe if you're lucky enough when you come out here, it would be open. Just another angle of the La Casa property here. When Greta Garbo was out here, obviously there was more grass and things than the cement that's right here on this patio. Again, they use this from time to time for private events and things. So, but this was the area that she would just stay and relax, sit in the shade. And another old Hollywood person who lived here at the La Quinta Resort for a number of years was Dorothy Arzner. And this is actually her house, Arzner Villa. And this is the house of Dorothy Arzner, who was the first female director in Hollywood. Basically from 1927 to 1943. She was basically the only female director in Hollywood. And this is her house. She lived here for many years. Her house is right next to where Greta Garbo would stay. So this is the Arzner Villa, if you come out here to the La Quinta Resort to look it up. Now, one of the shows that was filmed here at La Quinta Resort was the 16th season of The Bachelorette, if you watch that show at all. Most of the filming was done here at the El Presidente suite. This suite has its own suite, but its own guest house, its own pool. If you watch the show, you can see that all the different things that came with it and what it looks like on the inside. So in 1953, Ginger Rogers got married to her fourth husband here at the La Quinta property. And she got married right here in front of this waterfall. This is Avenida Obregon that cuts through the west side of the property, and all the way up the street on both sides is resort property, except for this one property here on the corner, right across from La Casa, Greta Garbo's place. Back in 1976, L. Ron Hubbard bought this property here, and everything all the way up on the left-hand side of the road, all the way up almost to where that the hill is, straight back there. He bought 3 ranches. One was called Palms, one was called Olives, and this one they named Rifle. And this is where L. Ron Hubbard stayed. Now they built this bunkhouse right here after he bought it. But this is where, from 1976 to 1977, L. Ron Hubbard was hiding out from the FBI, who he thought was going to raid him and his Scientology properties. So while he was out here, this is where they filmed a lot of their Scientology videos and made their audio tapes that are still in use today, apparently. After 1979, the Scientology folks, L. Ron Hubbard, sold these properties, and the Quinta Resort basically bought 2/3 of them. That house back there is Rifle, where L. Ron Hubbard would stay. That's where he lived for 3 years. So the resort bought the 2/3 of the property basically, and we'll go show you what they've turned that into. It's basically the tennis center and the spa. Now Scientology reportedly bought this property back, this Rifle property, a few years ago anyway, and rumor was they were going to turn it into a museum. People that work at the resort here say they really only see a few caretakers coming and going out of here, so unknown what they're using it for, if anything. But this is private property, not part of the resort. So all this property along here, again, all the way up, basically as far as you can see on the left-hand side, for the period of 1976-1979 was part of a huge Scientology ranch. As you can see, when the resort bought it, they have put in rooms, more cabanas and cottages. And as we get up here is where the resort spa is, and the spa facilities. If you get on Google Maps, you can look up this whole thing. This is where the spa facilities are. And again, used to be part of the ranch. When he bought the ranch, it was mostly alfalfa fields and some date trees and 3 ranch houses. So this currently is the La Quinta Resort tennis facility, but back in the day this was part of the Scientology compound. And where this tennis pavilion is right here, there used to be a pond. This was all open space. This building straight ahead, right behind the tennis court, is what was called Olives. It was Olives Ranch back in the Scientology days, and that's where the staff would stay when L. Ron Hubbard was down at Rifle. the staff would stay up here at Olives. And in addition, this tennis court was also where they filmed some of The Bachelorette. This is where they did the dodgeball scene. It was in this little facility here. And also the resort hosted, for those of you that are tennis fans, you know there's a big tennis tournament here in Indian Wells every year. Well, prior to the Indian Wells facility being built, that tennis tournament was for many years held here on the property. And they built a tennis stadium just for that event. And, you know, back in the day, all the name players would come out. It was hosted Jimmy Connors and Yvonne Lindell and Yannick Noah and, you know, just all those folks from back in those days. And then after many years here, it moved to the Hyatt over in Indian Wells for a few years while the Indian Wells tennis facility was being built. But again, this was part of the Scientology ranch. That building there, that kind of curves right there, it was the ranch house Olives. In addition to the tennis tournament that was hosted here, this facility here has hosted some charity tennis tournaments over the years. You know, with Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell, Serena Williams, Justin Bieber, and folks like that coming in to play tennis or goof around anyway for charity. So this is the other ranch house associated with the Scientology property. This was Olives, where also some of the staff would stay. So this is the very north end of the property if you're starting down where Rifle is. So really the only two structures left on the resort property is Olives and palms. And as you can see, there's still date palms here, which were on the property when L. Ron Hubbard was here from 76 to 79. Someone else who stayed here more than a few times was President Eisenhower and his wife, and they occupied this bungalow here that's on the basically on the east end of the property. And this would be the other side of the via. I believe the pool was added later. You also had people like the DuPonts and the Vanderbilts who would come out here and spend time. So one of the other locations that has been utilized by reality TV was the Hacienda Grande suite, which is here, number 735, used by The Bachelorette again, and also by Real Housewives of Beverly Hills during one of their episodes. It's also where Michael Jackson has stayed, and a few others. So just one of the other properties that they've used in the reality TV shows. So that's going to do it today from the La Quinta Resort. So just some of the other shows that have been filmed here. If you remember the show Heart to Heart with Robert Wagner and Stephanie Powers, the pilot episode for that show was filmed here on the property, all over this resort. For that TV show, this place was called the Golden Goose. But they've also filmed The Hills, filmed an episode here. Vanderpump Rules, filmed an episode here. But there's been a whole lot of different commercials filmed here and magazine photo shoots and things like that. And this place has grown from, the original main building and 6 casitas to now there's approximately 800 rooms. There's 41 swimming pools. I believe there's 53 hot tubs. Instead of the original 9-hole golf course from back in the 20s, there's now 3 18-hole PGA qualified golf courses designed by Jack Nicklaus, Greg Norman, Pete Dye. So there's a lot to do here. If you get the opportunity to come by and check it out or stay here, I encourage you to do so. If you're into the paranormal type stuff, there's a number of stories about ghosts and apparitions and things that have happened on the property here over the years from people that have stayed here and employees that work here. They've done some paranormal investigations here on the property. So if you like that kind of thing, it's another reason to come here and stay and check that out. So with that, we're going to call it a day here, and we will catch you next time on Discover This.